Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Third Eagle of the Apocalypse and the co-prophet of the End Times. This is my second part in a series on Vladimir Putin in Bible prophecy. He is the last king of the north, as found in Daniel chapter number 11. And he is destined to be provoked by the last king of the south, who is Barack Obama, into a nuclear attack upon the United States. And we have seen examples of this provocation all during the first 4 years of Obama's presidency. And just this morning, now today is the 12th of December, which is 12-12-12, incidentally, we have seen another example of Putin pushing back against the United States. So let me read this article from Reuters. And here is what Putin says. President Vladimir Putin warned against foreign meddling in Russian politics on Wednesday in his first State of the Nation speech since returning for a new 6-year term in the Kremlin in May. Putin, who last year accused the United States of encouraging opposition protests and claimed foreign governments spend money to seek influence elections, said Russians receiving money from abroad should be barred from politics. Direct or indirect meddling in our internal political process is unacceptable, Putin said. And I'd like you to take a look at the photograph which accompanied this article. Now, in Bible prophecy, Russia is symbolized by the bear. And notice how Mr. Putin's hand looks like a bear's claw in this photograph. Now, as the last king of the north, Vladimir Putin is very popular with the Russian people. And as I pointed out in part 1 of this series, he is very outward in his expression of his Russian Orthodox faith. And just recently, he put in jail the Russian punk rock group called Pussy Riot. By the way, isn't that a strange name to give a Russian rock group? Why choose an English title? Of course, that whole thing was set up to appeal to the decadent West. In any case, Putin did the popular thing by putting these young women in jail. And in this next clip, he makes it clear that he understands fully well what the name Pussy Riot means.
Could you please translate the name of the band into Russian?
Pussy Riot, the punk band. I don't know what you call them in Russian, sir. Maybe you could tell me.
Can you translate the first word into Russian? Or maybe it would sound too obscene. Yes, I think you wouldn't do it because it sounds too obscene, even in English.
I actually thought it was referring to a cat, but maybe I'm missing a point here. But anyway, so do you think that the case was handled wrongly in any way? Could some lessons be learned?
I know you understand it perfectly well. You don't need to pretend you don't get it. It's just because these people made everyone say their band's name too many times. It's obscene, but forget it.
As I have stated in part 1 of this series, Vladimir Putin hardly ever misses a photo op with the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. When he first ran for president, he was supported by the patriarch Alexei II. However, we found out later that the patriarch was a former KGB agent. Let me read from this article from the Daily Telegraph as it was printed on the internet. This relationship might seem odd. It was the KGB, after all, that led persecution of the church in Soviet times, when priests were regularly jailed, tortured, and executed. Neither this, nor accusations that Mr. Putin is restoring many of the attributes of the Soviet rule seem to bother Alexei. Although he has never confirmed it, the patriarch, like the president, is a former KGB agent codenamed Drozdov, according to Soviet archives opened to experts in the 1990s. So now let's take a look at this clip. This is a recent one in which Putin appears with Alexei's successor, the Patriarch Kirill. Now, this current Russian Patriarch, Kirill, is also a former KGB agent. His code name was Mikhail. He got into a bit of a trouble this past spring when his photograph appeared on the official Russian Orthodox website, and he was wearing a $30,000 wristwatch. Let's take a look at this photograph. Now, this photograph of the Patriarch appeared on the official Russian Orthodox website, and it shows the Patriarch wearing a $30,000 wristwatch. However, so many people complained that they took down this photograph and put up this retouched photograph in which they cover up the wristwatch with the sleeve of this jacket. However, they forgot to delete the wristwatch's reflection in the tabletop. And this caused such an embarrassment that they had to take down this photograph and put this photograph back up again. So when Daniel says that this last king of the north magnifies himself rather than Almighty God, I am sure he is talking about Vladimir Putin. And Daniel also says that this last king of the north has some kind of disconnect with women. Maybe that explains why Putin is always trying to prove his masculinity and often shows himself in public, for example, without wearing any shirt. There's no doubt that Putin cultivates this macho image of himself. This is not only a way to endear himself with the Russian people, but it is also a very subtle warning to the West. He will not be afraid to launch a nuclear attack against the United States. Now, the last king of the north stages these events to remain popular with his own people. Just this past year, a Russian reporter was fired from her job because she refused to cover one of these staged events. Let me read this article from, again, the Daily Telegraph. Vladimir Putin has admitted to staging some of his most recent stunts, including meeting endangered big cats and the discovery, which is in quotation marks, of ancient Greek amphorae in the Black Sea, a Russian journalist has claimed. But the president complained that while he was ridiculed for his staged, managed photo opportunities, they at least raised awareness and encouraged people to start reading about history and the environmental issues. The comments came during a bizarre 20-minute conversation in the Kremlin with an opposition journalist who claims to have recently lost her job over refusing to cover his most recent stunt. Masha Gessen, who recently published a fiercely critical biography of Mr. Putin, was sacked as editor of Volkrogazeta magazine for refusing to send a reporter to cover the Russian president's photo opportunity, a microlight flight with endangered Siberian cranes, earlier this month. So let's take a look at this clip where Putin is training Siberian cranes to learn how to fly south for the winter. So the Russian reporter at Masha Gellin was fired for refusing to cover this event. And that just shows how controlled the Russian news media is, very much like the American news media. Maybe you remember, for example, the second presidential debate, where the CNN moderator, Candy Crowley, supported Barack Obama very openly. If she had, on the other hand, supported Mitt Romney, she also would have lost her job. Both the media in Russia and the United States are controlled. We are not told the truth. During the election campaign, Mitt Romney said that Russia is our enemy. Of course, he is correct. But Americans prefer to live in la-la land, and therefore they elected Barack Obama, even though he had said that he would be willing to be more flexible with the Russians after the election. He told this to Dmitry Medvedev. What he means by flexible is he is more willing to give away the store. Immediately after his election, Vladimir Putin called him and invited him to Moscow, and it's my understanding that Obama has accepted his invitation. I am sure Putin wants to know exactly how much of the store Obama is willing to give away. And now in part 3 of this series, I will further look into how Putin and Obama fulfill Daniel's prophecy in Daniel 11. They are the last king of the north and the last king of the south. And as always, I do offer a free copy of my book, Revelation Unraveled. If you are interested, you can write to the address you see on your screen or send me a private message to my YouTube channel.